There we go. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all. Hi, Lori. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Lauren. How are you doing today?
Doing good, doing good. Tons of things going on in the world around us, but I am happy to be with you this morning.
I agree. Let's just forget about all the craziness in the world and concentrate on something simple like financial performance measurements and cash flow for a company. How's that?
I feel like I need a nap.
Yeah, I do too. But yeah, we're gonna have an exciting day talking about numbers that at least gives us a feeling of control when we understand what the numbers are. I tell people, I've said this on the show before, a gut's a wonderful thing, but my gut, going on a gut instinct, and it's a wonderful thing. But I always say if you feed the gut data, it makes better estimations, it makes
Mm.
better choices. So a gut plus some data is extremely powerful. And unfortunately, too many small businesses rely only on the gut. I'm trying to get a gut and a little data also.
Yeah. and we are learning not to be afraid of the data. So
Exactly. The data's fun. And while we're just chatting for a minute before we start, I like to remind people of this, or I shouldn't say remind, but tell people this, because this is something that somebody doesn't realize about me unless I actually share it. Because as you say, the guru of all numbers. So people kind of think I had this trajectory where I started as I was good in math as a kid, right? And then I went into finance and I started in finance and that was my trajectory, right? That is so far from the truth. That is not at all. I was awful in math. I hated math. I took algebra 3 times till I finally friggin' got it. I actually chose to take it again in college because I was like, I've got to understand this, right? I would sit there, and when I got involved for that brief time as a banker, I would look at numbers and try to add them up real quickly without a calculator just to get better. I never understood percentages, could not get my hands around percentages if no way. And then the beginning of my business and my career, I was Deborah Darris without Instagram and the internet. I was a marketing person. I was the warm, fuzzy marketing person when I started out, right, in my 20s. I knew nothing about numbers. And I would say really, it was my desire to understand my own company's numbers, feeling like I didn't understand if I was making money. I was working all the time, but I had no cash. Anybody relate to that, right? I was in my, mid 20s, had started the company when I was very young. And it was this drive to understand numbers. Lauren, there was a time I went to the bookstore because we didn't buy things on the internet then, right? And I bought these 4 books. I started buying one book to understand finance, but I couldn't understand what that book was saying, right? So then I bought another book to try to understand this book. I had 4 different books laid out trying to figure out what this information was. Went back, got my MBA, wanted to concentrate on finance, got out of my MBA, still didn't understand it, still didn't, right? It wasn't until I really dived in it and then I started, this old statement that if you want to become really good at something, teach it. I started a class through my company, how to read financial statements. I started teaching the class, learning to understand it, and then all of the information over the years culminated for me. And I think the main thing, and this is the thing that I guess is what I try to do for others, once I understood it, this is kind of a weird way of saying it, but I understood why I didn't understand it. I understood what was lacking in the teaching. I understood how so many things that are not known were presented with things that were not known. So I didn't have a basis. I didn't have a foundation. That's why you hear me say it's like A plus B equals B plus A. So, I only tell this story to encourage those on the call that feel like I'm not good at numbers, I don't know math, I don't understand this stuff. You understand how your business works. It's just a matter of now putting numbers to it. So I'm really coming from a position of having understood where you're coming from, and that's where my teaching. And I know I just rambled on for a whole lot, but I think that was a very interesting aspect, and I say it as an encouragement. So I'm going to hand it back to you because we're going to do some really cool things. And I'm also getting everybody, what I'm also doing is I'm getting you prepared for today, because I'm going to take you on a head spinning tour of numbers, right? So I'm kind of getting you ready for what I'm going to do to you as well. Okay. So before I do, Lauren, let me send it back to you to get us started this morning.
Okay, will do. And I'm just going to put it out there. Nobody run away. Lori's going to break it down for us so that we aren't afraid.
Go.
All right, let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll do a quick intro and then I'll hand it right back over to you, Lori.
Okay.
So good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Lauren Simpson. I'm with the SBDC, or the Small Business Development Center. We are a national program with over 1,000 locations across the country. And as I always say, regardless of what state you might be in, you should be able to get connected with a local small business development center. And you'll want to do so because we offer no-cost services to local small businesses. And they're at no cost because we are federally funded. So all of your tax dollars have taken care of all of our fees and our resources are free to you. For the Los Angeles network, which is the network I represent, we have locations throughout the Los Angeles, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. And there's a map in front of you so you can see our locations. Again, we offer no-cost business advising where you're able to get in contact with a local business expert. And so you're able to get in contact with our guru of all numbers, Miss Lori Williams, or one of our other fabulous business experts. And again, they're able to sit with you one-on-one via Zoom for now and offer their expertise. And then we also offer virtual trainings, much like the training you have joined today. Please get in contact with us. We'd love to work with you, and we're here to help. So you can call us at 866-588-7232, or you can go online, smallbizla.org/new client. For those of you who have reached or who have joined us today outside of the LA network, you can go to americansSBDC.org/find your SBDC. And then really quick, Lori,
Yep.
I wanted to remind everyone about the California Dream Fund. You can get additional information at smallbizla.org/dream fund. And you'll want to do so as this program is opening up very soon. We look to have our classes launch our training program, launch in June. And so some information will go out this week. Be sure to log on to smallbizla.org/dream fund so that you can get additional information. With that, I'm going to stop my screen share, Lori, and then quick housekeeping. For those of you who have joined us today, please be sure to put all of your questions into our Q&A. Again, questions into the Q&A, as Lori will be able to scan them there. And then the chat will be reserved for any links and important information that Lori would like to share with you. With that, Lori, I'm handing it back over to you.
Okay, well, wonderful, wonderful. I've just got a couple quick things before we get started, and mostly is about some upcoming classes that I have, and Lauren's putting the link so you can sign up for them. Tomorrow, I'm doing the Finance Literacy Session 2. This is financial management of your company. What I'm doing in this class is going through a whole set of performance measurements. You're going to know what that is by something I'm going to say when I show you the Excel document today. Then I repeat this class and the Financial Literacy Session 1 on a monthly basis. So I'm giving you the date for the Session 1. Also, I have not chosen a date yet. I will by next week. My sales tax seminar is coming up. I want to mention that I've actually changed the name to not confused about sales tax to should you be charging sales tax. What I'm finding is so many people, especially those that are selling online, through perhaps Shopify. You're not collecting sales tax on your products when you need to be. I'm seeing a lot of people go to local flea markets thinking they don't have to sell, they don't have to charge sales tax when they're selling at a farmer's market. I should say farmer's markets, you do. And so there's a lot of rules and regulations you may not be aware of. I'm going to be holding that class in June. Next week, I'll give you the link and the date to sign up for that one as well. Also, as far as upcoming shows for Small Biz Talk, this will be the last Ask Lori for about a month or so, where I go over different things in Excel documents, etc. I've got a complete lineup next week. I'm very excited to have Emma back. Those who have been with us for a long time or see Emma's in the chat all the time. And I actually emailed Emma, and I'll announce this. I told Emma, you tell us what you want to talk about next week. As everybody knows, when Emma first came on, she was a wealth of information on how she transitioned her on-site physical therapy business to offering online classes internationally. And it's been, I don't know, maybe several months. I lose track of time, but it's been a while. So we're going to check in with Emma, and I'm not even going to say, Emma, let's discuss this. I told her she is now not only an expert on the guest, but Emma is an expert in the audience, right? So I said, Emma, you come on, you talk, and I'm going to listen. So next week we bring back Emma. Then the following weeks, we've got some companies that have products. I've got in 2 weeks a woman who actually had to sell her company, or chose, I should say, to sell her company. And she's going to tell about using business brokers and all kinds of cool information. Then I have a fellow advisor that's going to come and talk about sales techniques, etc. And I'll be announcing all of the show lineup. So everything's coming up pretty cool for those frequent flyers that are with us every week. My heart goes out to you. It's so happy to see the numbers as I first come on. So Lauren, are you ready for some really exciting Excel stuff?
I think so.
I think so. So let me get this Excel document shared, and I'll tell you what I've done. I have brought back Lauren's Cookie Company. Remember Lauren's Cookie Company. So one of the things I didn't get a chance to do before the show is to go back through the past shows and identify the different shows where I first discussed some of the information I'm going to review today. But, you know, Lauren always puts the link to the past shows, and all of them have a headline. So you'll see the Ask Lori sessions. So I invite you to go back and review some of those, because what I'm doing today is, in those shows, I talked about what I'm calling the individual dance steps. So maybe we talked about how to figure out the cost, how to do an analysis, how to then do a cash flow. That was last week on the cash flow, right? So last week when I did the cash flow, I used a photographer. This week I went back to the cookie, created a cash flow for the cookie, same thing, just a cash flow for the cookie. So here's what my intent is for this week. What I want to do is I want to bring all of the dance steps together, okay? Every single dance step together, so you can see how I use these forms in relationship to each other. And you know what I'm going to do, Lauren, is I'm going to keep the chat up, and I'm going to watch the chat. I know we always say put the Q&A in, but I know when I teach, everybody starts commenting in the chat, and I miss a whole lot, right? So when you have a guest, I like to have just the Q&A because I'm focusing on the guest. But guys, I'll watch the chat today, so you can put any comments or questions in the chat. Okay, everybody ready? You got your thinking brain on? Okay, so here's the first thing. With finance, you really have to focus on what you're doing. I'm going to start out by telling you something that I've not been discussing before, but I discuss with people all the time. What I tell people is, when you sit down to do any kind of financial analysis, I'm saying whether you're putting your information in QuickBooks, whether you're putting it in Excel, you're analyzing it. To the degree you can, I say to the degree you can, I understand we all get interruptions, but you want to be very, very conscious of creating a focus space that you can work in. You don't want to be doing this, answering texts, answering the phone, watching kids, whatever. You want to try to have a quiet time, because numbers I always say have relations, and so do formulas. And if you get interrupted all the time, you tend to not be able to follow the logic. You miss one piece of logic, you can mess up. And I see that in QuickBooks a lot of times where people will put in the data twice, or they do something and they're only causing themselves real headaches. So I wanted to start out by saying, I want you to think about dealing with your company's finance in a different manner. Give it the respect it needs for that attention. And what I tell people is when you're sitting down to enter data, if you do have to leave your task, make sure, and this is what we always have done in accounting and finance, say you're looking at some data entry, you cross off where you are and you make a note before you go. So when you come back, you can be really refreshed on this. The other aspect I want to talk about is the mindset. And I have conversations with people about this on a daily basis. They look at finance as that thing that they put off to the last minute and they really don't want to spend a lot of time doing. And then you have apps like QuickBooks Online that sells you on this concept that you can just link all this data and it's going to mysteriously happen, and you let it happen behind the scenes and it's all going to work perfect. That is so untrue. I don't even know the words. It's like beyond untrue. I always tell people that through the SBDC, I see a lot of QuickBooks Online files that have the data synced without checking everything. 99.9% of them are incorrect. I look at the balance sheet, completely incorrect. So what I'm inviting you here as I'm speaking of this is that finance is such an important part of your company. Now, I get why people put it off. One, it's confusing. They don't know what to do. They're not sure what aspect they need to do. But that's what's hurting the small companies out there, is not fully understanding what's going on financially in their business. And I guess that's my claim to fame. I'm trying to get everybody to be comfortable with the numbers, understand the numbers, and start engaging in activities. I'm speaking this at the very beginning because today what I'm doing is I'm combining a lot of the different tools I expressed before together in a thought process to say, if I was to then manage this company, this is what I would do, this is how I would use the tools, and this is what I would do on a monthly basis. I know that everybody has no problem investing adequate time in marketing, and they see that as a very crucial aspect. I invite you to look at finance the same, if not even more. So the misnomer in a small business that you don't have to really spend that much time on finance is completely not true whatsoever. And as Lauren kind of said, and we were talking, different things going on in the world, we're all aware of inflation and issues that are being experienced on a daily basis. Now, you as a person is experiencing it, but you as a business is experiencing it as well. So I think it's always important to understand your financial numbers, but I think that, given the next couple months, years, whatever, I'm not a predictor of the economy by no means, but it's more important now because those that are still suffering from the financial hit with the pandemic may not be in a good financial position. And so understanding the information that I share is real important. Okay, so with that, we're going to get started here. And what I'm doing today is I'm just going through things I've already done, and I'm giving you the feeling of how the sheets work together. That's my whole goal. It's like I've already done this. If it's new to you, like I said, there is a show that you can go where I go in detail. I'm going to go over it enough so you at least get what I'm doing. But what I've done is I've combined all of these sheets together so you can see the analysis that can come out of the sheets. Okay, I got the chat open. If you have any questions, I'll try to glance at it now and then. So I'm going to go back to, as we're calling, Lauren's cookie company. So the first thing, and this would be what you would do, I'm going to state this immediately. If you're a service-based business, you're going to do the same thing. It's going to be your labor. So please don't look at this and say, but I sell a service, this does not relate to me. There is nothing you would be doing in business, nothing that this does not relate. There's no size that it does not relate. There's nothing. I mean, this relates to every single company. It's like fundamental to algebra, like A plus B equals B plus A, as I was saying earlier about algebra. It's fundamental. Every company this applies to. So don't ever think at all this doesn't apply to you. It does. The only time it does not apply is if it's a hobby-based business, you can throw money into it and you don't care if you make any money. Then, it's not an issue, right? But I don't think that's the bulk of the people. If not, it's not anybody that's on this call. So let's get started. So I'm creating the cookie company and I'm starting from scratch, no pun intended, scratch cookies. I'm starting from scratch so you can see where I got the data and then where I came from. So let's pretend I'm just now saying I'm going to start the cookie company. What I'm going to do is I'm going to first figure out how much does it cost to make a cookie. Now, this could be how much does it cost to make any product. It could be how much labor, which we're going to talk about labor in the cookie, how much labor to provide the services I want to provide. Like I said, all companies this applies to. So all I've done here is I said I have to calculate, follow the cursor here, calculate the ingredients cost to make a cookie. So I said, okay, these are my ingredients, but it makes 240 cookies, one batch, okay? And these are the ingredients. They probably aren't the total ingredients. This is made up, okay? But this is my ingredients cost, but I'm making a batch of 240 cookies, right? So the first thing I have to do is get this into a unit cost. What is the cost of one cookie then? So if it cost, and I rounded numbers up throughout and everything, guys, just to make it simple. So if your number is an exact match, it's because I rounded. So if it costs $6.20 in ingredients to make 240 cookies, then how much does it cost in ingredients to make one cookie? That's just the next question I ask. What you do in finance is no different than in marketing. You ask a question. We're used to marketing questions. What is my target audience? How much are my competitors charging? This is the same thing. We're just following an analysis, a mental analysis to see where we want to go. And if I know I need to know the unit price, I got to say, how much does it cost to make a cookie? Okay. So $6.20 cost per batch, 240 cookies equals 0.02 cents per cookies. My formula, 6.2, I just abbreviated, divided by 240, okay? So this is just simple formula, simple math. So approximately 0.026 per cookie, 0.03 per cookie is my cost. So now I have a per unit price. Everybody got that? And communicate with me in the chat. If you got it, thumbs up. If you have any questions, I just want to know you're out there and you're following me so far as I build this together. So right now, I know it is a per unit price for a cookie, okay? Now, what I need to do next is I need to figure out what exactly is happening in the way I sell my product. Well, I've got the ingredients, okay, but if I have a bunch of ingredients and I just throw a bunch of ingredients in a bag and sell it to you, I know cookie dough is good, but cookie dough is not what we usually sell. We got to bake it, okay? So what I did now is I said, okay, that's my ingredients, but does that create a finished product? So the question I asked, does that create a finished product? No, I got to bake it. So even though I am physically baking the cookie, I am going to include labor in my calculation. You guys heard me say this before. You create a forecast, you create financial analysis that says your time's for free, you're paying a rent on your house and you're working out of your house, so that's for free. You're using your computer, so that's for free. You're going to create a company where you can never afford to pay yourself, you can never afford for a computer, you can never afford for rent. It only goes to reason. If you're creating a foundation of financial numbers you're going to use to set your selling price, you're going to use to make these decisions, and you don't include some of the costs, how are you going to be able to afford it later? So those of you who sit around roundtable discussions or around, just conversations with fellow entrepreneurs, or even your own internal dialogue, when you say, I'm working so much, but I can't afford to pay somebody to come in, or I can't afford to move out of my home office, I really would like to get a rent, I really like to get a new computer, it's because you did not build this cost in immediately at the very beginning when you did the analysis. Now, this can be changed. You redo the analysis. It's not like you can't change this. So I want to say that for anybody that goes, oh my God, I didn't do it. What does it mean? So now I'm saying, how much would I pay a baker? So I'm performing the act of baking the cookies, but I'm not going to say, well, I'm a CEO of my company, so I should be paid $100,000. No, I have to look at the labor on how much it would cost to pay somebody to do that same activity. That way I have baked in, no pun intended, I've baked into my numbers the amount to hire a baker. Now, these numbers aren't correct. It's probably much more to pay for a baker, but they're just numbers I use. So I say, then how much does it cost in labor to make a batch of cookies? So once again, I look and say, what is the labor? And I analyze how much time did it take for me to make a batch of cookies? Well, it took an hour. So if an hour cost $11.50, one batch of cookies, $11.50, basically what I'm doing is I'm dividing 11.5, 240 in. So that is 0.05. This formula is not written correctly. Ignore that. What I'm basically doing is saying $11.50 per hour divided by 240 is 0.05. Okay, so that's my labor component. So now what does it cost for me to make a cookie? It costs 0.026 in ingredients, 0.05 in labor. My total cookie cost is 0.07, about 0.08 cents per cookie. Okay, so that gives you the numbers to make my cookie. Now, it's amazing to me how many people do not know the answer to that. They do not know how much it costs, or they only included some of their ingredients in. They did not include these numbers. I'm amazed when I work with people that don't know how much it really costs to make their product, or if they got a lot of products, they never analyzed it, or if it went up in cost, they didn't analyze that increased number. Guys, you need to know this. You need to monitor it. If it changes, you need to reassess, and you need to change all the data that's dependent on it. You'll see what I mean by that. So now I have a baked cookie. Awesome. I have a baked cookie. Can I hand you a baked cookie in your hand? No, I got to put it in some kind of packaging. Okay. So what I did is I figured out what my packaging was, and I figured out what is the quantity of cookies I want to put in a package. So I'm saying a small has 10, a medium has 20, and a large has 30 cookies. So these are my products: small, medium, and large. Here's the number of cookies. Here is the cost per cookie, okay? Then this is the packaging, and now I have derived at my total cost. And what it really is my total cost to make a small product, my total cost to make a medium product, my total cost to make a large product, and I've deemed this is my sell price, okay? So the whole goal of this spreadsheet, the takeaway, the information I had to get is right here. I needed to know what was the total cost and what was the sell price of my products or service. I always say products, but I mean service as well. This is the information that I needed. And this tab now will be here for me to go back and update at any time I need to update it. And I will look at this maybe on a monthly basis, recalculate it. If my ingredients and my labor doesn't change, I could not look at this for, how many months. But this is the benchmark numbers that I'm going to continue to carry forth in my analysis. So as a interim CFO for companies, I will go in and calculate this. Then I look at the business model and I define how often this could change where this would not be true anymore. Are they changing the selling price? Did the cost change? Did anything change? And I might on a quarter go back through a tab such as this just to do a reanalysis of the cost to make sure. Because once I take these two numbers with me forward into the next set of analysis, I'm going to assume this is true. If the underlining data here changes, this assumption's no longer true. So that's my first tab. It's my product cost to my sell price. It's a tab that I should update. Now I need to do one more tab on gathering information from Lauren's Cookie Company, because she's hired me nicely as a consultant to help her get this started. So I look at it and said, Lauren, what's your overhead? So we said we got marketing, we got the cost to go farmers market, the auto gas, an assistant to be at the market, cell phone, internet, some permits that we have to get on a monthly basis, and the rent. And this all totals this amount per month and this amount per year. Just a list. This is how much it costs every single month. Nothing complicated here. Now, there was also a startup cost, mixers, containers for mixing, oven. This is a one-time purchase just to get in the business. This is a number I want to be conscious of, because I want to say, well, when do I actually get paid this money back? Because true profit doesn't happen until until I get paid this money back. And then all I did here was just pick up the end data I had of what it was for my total cost and my sell price, because this gave me a sheet that tells me pretty much all the data I need to go forward. Once I have this data, these are the dance steps, the individual dance steps. I can create a ton of different dances, answering a million different questions. I can successfully run this company. I can forecast, I can predict, I can see how it's going, I can do everything. So everybody good. We got the data. You saw where I got it. Now let's see how I use the data. So the first thing I'm going to do is an analysis, and I'm going to go slow through here so you can see. Some of the information here is just picked up, so I have it. That's all it is. So over here, guys, all I'm doing is saying, here is my products. Here's the number of cookies, here's my sell price, and here is my cost. That's all I did. I just picked that up from before. This is the dashboard I'm using. This is the amount of data that I am going to assume is stable and correct unless I see I need to go back and reanalyze. But this is the data that I derived from those two tabs, those activities. Then what I've done over here is I'm starting to do a forecast. I'm starting to put together a forecast. And all I'm doing is I'm saying sales. How many of the small did I sell? How many of the medium did I sell? I can say this differently. How many of the small do I think I'm going to sell? How many of the medium do I think I'm going to sell? I can also put two together and say, how many did I sold? How many do I think I'm going to sell? Same dance steps, right? What is the selling price? I got that already from my last data gathering. What is the cost to produce? We got that, okay? Had to multiply by the number sold each time. And all I'm doing is saying, if I sell of the small 200, I'm selling it at $5.50 per unit, per small unit. This is my total in sales. I did the same thing for medium, same for large, total sales. Very, very easy. Then I did the same thing with the cost. I know my cost to produce. I got my total cost now. I've matched quantities. Notice this matches. These quantities are matched. I figured out what was my total sales minus my total cost. That gave me the gross profit. Gross profit is a very, very important number to know, because gross profit tells us how much money do we have left over to pay for overhead and to have money to pay ourselves and reinvestment in the company. Very, very important number to know. By the way, my financial class session 2 goes into this in detail tomorrow. And I should have said, these are all free classes through the SBDC. I should have said that right away. I just kind of assume everybody knows there's no charge for these classes, but I go into great detail in that class. So then what I did is I said, well, what was my overhead on a monthly basis? What amount of money does the company make? Okay, what amount does the company make? So therefore, I know the exact net income that I'll make. You won't have access to the PowerPoint, but you're going to have access, Nancy, to this taping. So you're going to see it again and again and again. So that's the advantage of this. And Nancy asked a great question, will I have access? So I'm going to take a moment to tell everybody this, that you probably already know. I do not give out templates. I build the templates. If you want to do a one-on-one, I will help you build a template for you. I am doing what is perceived as a mean thing when I say I won't give you my templates, but it's one of those tough loves. You know, anybody who's been a parent out there, it's a tough love. I give you a template. We take the chance that it's not set up properly, so one of the calculations wrong. But more important, you don't understand what you're doing. You put numbers in, you don't get it. You build this. You build this. You know it. You feel it. You breathe it. You live it. I want everybody to understand templates. Every single day of my SBDC life, people come to me, they filled out a template, they don't even know what it means. They don't even know the calculations. I won't do that, but I will teach you everything you need to know. So Nancy, great question. You'll get a link to this. You'll be able to watch it a million times. Wanted to address that right away. Okay, so let's go back to what I did. We know all I did was, these are numbers. There's no formulas in here. The only thing I did is I said, this times this equals this. You know, if you say the number of units sold times the sell price, it equals that in sales. That's the only formula I have in here. So what this is telling me is that I have a net income of 2026. Now, what is cool is that if you want to, and I have to move things around on my desktop sometimes to get where Zoom lets me see it. If you want to, you can make it where some cells are linked. And like I could change this to 175 sold, which automatically changes it to 175 in the quantity of cost because these much mass, and I can look at and see, okay, that would bring me to 1916. These are very, very simple Excel tricks. You can do it in Google as well. You can calculate this with a crayon and a piece of paper. I've done nothing fancy in this. It's just that I've linked some cells so I can go back and I can estimate and I can say, well, what if I sell this? What if I sell this? Now, the advantage of this right here. So let's just focus on this. So first of all, guys, you know how I created it. You know where I got the sell price based on what I think I should be selling it in the marketplace. So I could create that on what I think I should be selling in the marketplace. I got the cost by the actual cost, including the labor. I'm just estimating or historical data, whichever, the quantity sold, and I'm matching the quantity sold to the quantity and cost because that's the only true way to look at profitability, okay? Now, if there's one takeaway only, let's look, and I'm going to do things fast. I'm just trying to show, I'm just demonstrating. Let's look at the magic of this. Say I was forecasting. And I said, I'm going to go to the farmer's market and, you know, probably there's like 100 people that come through. If 25 people come to my table and out of that, half of them purchase, I could say 14 people purchase, and I do this X number of weeks, I would be selling this much. That's the kind of mental exercise you must do to do forecasts. You don't say, well, and it's going to grow by 10%. You put in the magic 10%. Oh my God, I don't know where, whoever told the small business community to do that and everybody bought into, I'd like to sit down and have a discussion with them. Believe me, companies don't grow that way. If you even look at historically, companies don't have this magic percentage you just apply. I am telling you the good, bad, and ugly. You got to sit down and think it through. I do this type of situation where then somebody would put in numbers, right? And I go, so how many farmers markets are you going to? 3. How many people go to that? 100. How many people do you think would go to your, booth? Maybe 50% of them. How many would buy? 25%. Okay, well, that equals 200 sales. You put in 5,000. How is that even making sense? Usually when I look at somebody who just put in numbers without doing a mental exercise to get those numbers, when I break the numbers down, there is absolutely no logic. In fact, one of my well-known favorite sayings among all of them, I call them my Laurieism. Do you want to be more tired, more broke? Do you have any money to buy a quart of milk? You guys have heard some of them. But I always say, do you have a direct line to God? And they look at me and go, well, what are you talking about? And this is for labor companies. I go, well, the way you calculated it, you just changed the number of hours in a day to about 53. Do you have a line in to do that? So what I'm saying is when you just say some percentage of growth or you make up a number, you can tell when ill logic is engaged and does not support the numbers. In fact, for some time, many decades ago, when I played more in the corporate world, I was an advisor to an investment bank, and they would bring the numbers to me to say, do I think the management has control? Do they understand what's going on? And I would use these different metrics to go, no, there's no logic based in this. I know there's not. So what I'm communicating now is you don't just stick numbers in here. You actually have some logic. But what I can do is I can use this alone, just this one chart I created, and everybody sees where I got it from, nothing mysteriously, to create parameters. I'm using my hands to say parameters. So instead of just thinking a forecast saying, I'm going to do this, or I believe this is what it's going to do, you could say, what is the minimum number I have to sell? So basically you're beginning with the end in mind financially, and you're working your way backwards, right? So I can say, well, what if I sold 100? Obviously I'd have to buy 100 by linking these two. It makes me honest. I still would have made money. So I could, but what if I only sell 50 in the small? Well, I'm getting pretty low here. What if I only sell 50 in here? You can actually come down and you can identify what is the smallest amount, what's the largest amount, how much would you have to sell. You can also go back. Yellow tells me to put it in here because there's a formula. I can turn around and say, what if I decrease my price? I want to do a discount. What if I decrease my price? How does that change these numbers? What if I sell this instead for only $8? And I'm just sticking numbers in and I'm showing you that what I'm doing is, because I've just linked this and you can recalculate it on a piece of paper, there's nothing fancy. I can say, well, I don't want to make less than 668. That is my drop bottom price. And so if I can't make more than 668, remember I use small numbers to make these not confusing. I'm not saying somebody can live on $668, okay? I just don't want you to have to look at big numbers. But if I say that's my bottom line, I don't want to do this if I can't make more than that, it gives me a formula. It says then I must sell 50 at $4.50. It must cost me only $1.07 to produce. I must sell 150 at $8.50. It must cost me only $1.94 to produce. Do you see how I'm able to engage in actual data conclusions on how many I have to sell, at what price, how cost? So I like to say that my Excel documents create an algorithm because that's really sounds cool, but it's basically allowing you to put a bunch of numbers in and see what it is and how it's going to affect it. And keep in mind, the only place I actually have a formula that makes any difference is here to say this times this. I could do it with a calculator. I've linked this up just by saying this equals this cell. So I always remember to put the same quantity so I don't miss one of my production costs. Then I can do the same thing and I can look at it per year by just saying, what is this times 12? Or I could have done this each month and I could add up the months. This is just a quick version. How much would I make over the year? So all this is these numbers over an entire year. I could make the sales fluctuate like seasonal, and I could do this every single month and then total per year, which I do when I get very detailed. This is just a quick thing to show you. So you can see I can change the quantity, I can change the sell price, I could change the cost, I could identify, and I can also say, well, if this is what I must charge in the marketplace, I can't get away with charging anymore. This is the actual cost, I can't get it any less. This is the outcome of how much I will make based on my overhead. So this is giving me a feel. I want to come back and I just want to make one mention, and that's down here. Remember how I said that if you're engaging in the labor, you still put in the cost as if you were to hire somebody else to do it? So technically, I'm not making just 668. If I'm baking these amount of cookies, I would have paid out to somebody $427 in labor. And I just did that by knowing my labor was 0.05 times the number of cookies. It's just launched up there. It's synced into up there. And so I know I would really get 600, oops, sorry, I meant to click that, 668 from the company. I would get 427 from my labor that I'm not paying somebody else to bake. So I'd really get 1,095. So that's how this comes into play. So once again, if I just created this only, you can see the power. This is the data I already had. Thumbs up, everybody with me? Quick comments in chat because we're going to go on to the next section. I think everybody's got that. Hopefully you're seeing how powerful what I just did can be. Imagine doing this when you're creating a whole new division or a whole new company. Granted, it would be much more elaborate than this, but it's just because you got additional products you're looking at. If I have a ton of products, I'll use an average, I'll use a weighted average, I'll use statistical probability, I'll go into all kinds of fancy tricks, but I'm not doing anything different than what I've just done. Now, when I start talking about performance measurements, this is what I'm going to go into detail with the class tomorrow. What I'm doing is I'm looking at things in a percentage. I only just showed you one because gross profit and gross profit margin is so important. So I'm basically saying, okay, if this is my selling price, this is my cost, This is how much money I have left over after. You know, if I get $4.50 from somebody, but I had to pay out for the ingredients and labor, I have $3.43 left. So here's my margin, 76%. What that shows me is that means I have 76% out of 100% of the income, I have 76% left over to pay for my overhead and have money for reinvestment and pay myself. So it gives me a slice of a pie of how much I have left over to pay overhead and have money to pay myself and for reinvestment. So turning things into a percentage is even a added tool that you can do to analyze things even further. So the purpose of this is to be able to look at historical data to determine how well I've done, look at forecast, and play scenarios. What if I sell it at this amount? What if it costs this amount? What if my baked goods go up because my ingredients are going to increase because of inflation on flour? Instead of just going with my head down, what I would do is, if this number changed, if all of a sudden flour is going to cost me more money, I'm going to stick that in total cost, and I'm going to figure out how much I need to raise my prices. This is another thing I tell people all the time. You know that the companies will raise money or raise their selling price the minute inflation comes up. Small businesses just sit back and go, I don't want to lose a customer, and they take a hit to their profit, and it's hurting them. It's not benefiting them. I go into this whole showing of, if you even increase a sales number with lowering your price, how it's not going to help you. Like, say I turn around and I'm going to go over to where I could say suddenly it's going to cost me an extra, I don't know, we'll do 3 cents for my ingredients, right? That's going to change my cost. And so the ingredients in a small is going to change, and these would change too. I just don't want to take the time to do it. So I'm just going to say a small. So my ingredients goes up, and then I go, well, I'm afraid people won't be able to afford to buy it. So I got to lower my selling price. You can see how it's going to affect you. So I say, but I'll sell twice the amount. Well, you sell twice the amount, you're not incrementally going to get that much of a gain, because you're still having to pay out so much more. So you have to look at decisions on discounting. You have to look at decisions on lowering selling price, increasing cost from a financial perspective, not just from a customer, not just from a marketing. You first do an analysis like I'm showing you, so you can look at it from a financial. Don't make your business decisions based on marketing or customer behavior, because at the end of the day, I could turn around and say, well, customer behavior, they would buy a ton if I only charged $1. But you can tell that's not going to lead to any success financially. So what I'm doing is I'm re-inviting you to think about all the decisions you're making in the other areas of the business, to first have an analysis financially, how it will work out before you go into it. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is a complete different analysis. I'm going to use the same numbers. I need the same numbers. I already did. These two tabs, this cost of my product per unit and the overhead, and remember the startup, I'm going to come back to that in a minute. These are two tabs that everybody has to have. Like I said, it could be on a piece of paper and crayon, but everybody has to have these tabs in their business. When I start working with somebody, the first thing I do is you've got to calculate, and we get these numbers. They are just crucial. I always tell people, unless it's a hobby business and you don't care if you get paid and you're willing to put as much money into it that you want, you must have this. But a lot of times people stop there and then they don't continue with all of this analysis. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what also that you want to consider. Coach Ron, thank you, but please don't put comments into your personal business on this, because we really want to focus on the company. Really appreciate everything you're doing, but let's keep this to what's going on with the Small Biz Talks. Thank you. Okay, so let's go to cash flow and forecast now. So on the cash flow and forecast, what I'm doing is I'm trying now to say, how much money will I have when? That's my goal now. How much money will I have net when? When I was doing this analysis, it told me how profitable you are. It told me how profitable you could be, how profitable you would be. It told me how a change is going to make a change in any other aspect. A change in cost is going to make an aspect here. But I have to know, do I have enough money to run the company? Will I have enough money to pay the bills? So this tab is taking another thought process, okay? It's a different thought process into play. So let's go to the cash flow. This I went over in detail last week. You're going to see how I just kind of used it again. So what I did in this is I'm analyzing the amount of cash in and the cash balance. So I'm saying, okay, if my bank account balance is 2,500, we're just going to focus on a few. My bank account balance is 2,500. I'm going to come back to this. This is money that clients owe me. The sale already took place. The clients owe me the money. I maybe did a party and I invoiced somebody and they're going to pay me 100 in July and somebody owes me 300 in June. This sale's done. Services are rendered. The money's already here. That's what we know. Okay. If I have a amount that I owe to maybe some cookie dough or something, I still owe people this. I know this is where it goes. So this is the ingredients and the labor. If I paid somebody else, this is money that people owe me. Okay, so that's what goes in here. These numbers you saw before, these are my monthly amount. Okay, so what I'm first saying is, what is the difference in versus out? So what is in? Bank account is plus, so 2,500 plus money coming to me is in 300, and I have to know for sure they're paying me on June. This isn't a guess. I know for sure they're paying them in June. So if I have 2,500 in my bank account plus the money coming in, but if I got to pay a vendor, that's minus money coming out, and then it's minus all my overhead bills, and then the total amount out, it's the difference is how much do I have left over. Okay, and so in this case, I've got some numbers in here that are stagnant. You could see I've or staggered, I meant to say. And so you can see I have an upfront of $1,000 in gas here because I knew I was going to go on a big trip, but I can turn around and say, well, can I afford that? Can I not? I can change these numbers accordingly. But this number here, money in, money out, is basically saying add up all the money that's coming in for that month, take out all the money that's going out for that month. What is the difference? So because of the bank account, even though I spent a lot more on auto gas, I'm still a positive for that month, 1,095. So what would be my cash balance? 1,095. Now, the next month, I have, in this case, new sales coming in. I'm going to take that out for a second. Let's take the new sales coming in out for a second, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, what's happening next month? Well, I've got 100 that I owe somebody, right? Or sorry, 100 that people are paying me, clients are paying me, client money in, 100's coming in, 10's going out. All this money's going out. What happened for that month? That month, I have a negative 275. So more money went out in that month than came in, negative 275. Well, if I have a cash balance of 1,095 minus 275, I now have a cash balance of 820. Not looking good, not looking good. Well, the next month I have no money I'm collecting from sales that already exist, but I don't pay any vendors, but I still got my monthly overhead bills. So I'm negative 665, okay? Negative 665. If you take 820 minus negative 665, I still got 155 in the bank account. Okay, I still got 155. I'm gonna be holding on in August. I'm gonna be holding on in August. But I got these bills in September, minus 365. I'm going to be out of cash by September. Okay. So the first thing this did was allow me to see if I didn't sell anymore, and I just collected what was owed to me, paid out what I owe, pay my monthly bills, how long before I'm completely out of cash? This is like when people look at their retirement and they say, if I retire at age 65 and I get this amount of interest and I have this inflation, when am I out of money? It's the same concept, exact same concept. I'm totally out of money, right? Well, then what I can do is I can say new sales. Now, I did a cute little trick to make this work really easy. What I did over here, let's look at the cool trick first. I picked up the information from before. This is the small, medium, large. This is the sell price. This is the cost. And then I have the gross profit. We talked about that. And we talked about the gross profit margin. Well, when I look at a gross profit margin, whatever is above the gross cost of, like, let me say it this way. Okay, I got total income or total selling price, right? I got total selling price, right? So if I take this total selling price and I figure out the total cost, and then I subtract that to get the gross profit margin is just the percentage of selling price I have left over. That means the 100 minus 70% is 30. I rounded this off. 30%, that is the cost to produce, right? So what I'm saying, out of every dollar sold, it is 70 cents to produce, or 30 cents to produce, and 70 cents left over. Once again, this I get into great detail tomorrow. It really needs a whole class itself, so I'm being pretty quick here. But what I'm showing you is that I'm just using the gross profit margin and the cost to produce to figure out how much it costs to produce here. Now, why am I doing that? If it's a new sale, if I don't figure out and take out the cost to produce, I am not looking at the fact that I owe vendor money. And I want to do this really quick. So all I'm doing is saying, what if I make $1,000 in new sales? Well, 47 comes out of calculating basically the average cost to produce. It cost me on average 4.71% to produce. For every dollar sold, or every 100% of revenue, 4.71% goes to produce. So I know if I sell 1,000 cookies, it's going to cost me $47 to produce in labor. It automatically puts that in. Now, the goal of this is, now what I've done, guys, is I've taken the cash flow that tells me when I'm out of money, and then I've taken and turned it into a forecaster too. If you notice what I've done throughout, using the same analysis, I haven't changed A plus B equals B plus A, but I'm using it to look at historical data, how well I've done. I look at it to forecast. I look at it to play scenarios if price change. Then I look at it at cash flow to say, how much money do I have? How long? Now I'm saying, well, what if I sell this much? If I sell 1,000 in July, I'm going to have a cash positive balance of 743. Then I can say, how much would I have to sell? Well, 266, it's still positive, right? Still positive, getting close. 450, could I sell only 300 cookies? Getting close, 250 cookies. $28 left in the bank. I'm not going any lower than that, guys. 28, sold at 28. So what I have just done is I've answered a huge question that you guys sit back and you wonder every day. How much do I have to sell by when to have money to pay my bills? I know I have to sell 250. I basically might not even have to sell it by July. I could plug it in here, July, and then sell another 100 in August. Oh, and I still get my 28. So I have to sell 150 in July and 100 in August in order to pay my bills. These are questions that you guys sit back and think about every single day, thinking you don't have an answer. So what I've showed you here is very simple tricks. It looks magical. I've linked some cells together. I've not done anything complicated. If anybody needs an Excel, training, it's literally, most people know how to do this, but once again, you can do it through a piece of paper and a crayon. You can use your kid's crayon to do this, okay? So in summary, you first have to figure out how much it costs per unit, full cost, packaging, everything. You have to figure out how much you're going to sell. You have to figure out your overhead. You have to figure out your startup. Notice 4850. I want to go back real quick. Did I make the money back? No. I can figure out how many cookies I have to sell by when to make that money back, because that's the cash coming out of the company. That's how I go back and look at my startup. So I figure out my overhead. I figure out my startup. I turn around and I just play in to say how many would I have to sell at what price and what cost to make money. I can figure out how much I'd make per month. I can figure out how much I'd make per year. I can do a cash flow that first looks at how much money will I have if I didn't have any new sales, and when will I be cash negative? I can find that I'm cash negative here. Then I can insert a number and say, how many units do I have to sell at that selling price, at that cost, in order to not be cash negative? I could turn around and I could say, what if I increase my cost? What if I decrease my selling? There is not a scenario that can't be created here. I could turn around and I could say, what if I spend 400 in marketing? What is that going to look like cash wise? I could come back here and say, what if I spend more money in marketing and I can put it in my overhead? How much more sales do I have to do to make that marketing pay off? So what I've done here is I've showed you in a very simple way. It looks complicated, but you could see as I kind of built upon each of these, it's not. And I showed you how it's something you can create internally. And I can ask any scenario, I can tie back results, I can know what has to happen. You can't change what is going to happen. That's inevitable. Like, we have no control over inflation. We have no control over a lot of things, but we can understand what will happen if we do this, what will happen if we do that. So in a way, what we're doing is we're hedging our bet. We're hedging our bet and we're making internal decisions. We're using data from our company. We're using financial analysis to make decisions. I invite you to start figuring out your costs, going through this process. You'll be able to watch this video again and again and again. And as I always say, if you want to get in touch with me, reach out to Lauren. My finance class gets really engaged in these performance measurements that I was speaking of briefly here. Didn't have time to go through it today. And come in next week. We're going to have a bunch of great interviews, and I'll pick this up again in the future and go over it. So thank you. And I hope what I said to you today and what you watched me do is really helpful, and it did not make you afraid of the numbers. It showed you that it's not that complicated, but most of all, I hope it opened your eyes to a wealth of information and how you should be running your company. Okay, Lauren, back to you. How do you feel about your cookie company?
Confident, in one word.
Lauren, you were an observer. It wasn't that hard, was it?
It wasn't, honestly, when you initially were started talking, before you actually, even before I started doing like the intro, I almost wanted to like just run away, but the way you broke it down, it just seems like it's so manageable and just so easy.
You know,
And I loved hearing your background, Lori. I thought you just loved numbers from like inception.
no, and it wasn't until, I think back to algebra when they said A plus B equals B plus A, when I finally got to a point where I could find X, I didn't care. I would say this in, I was at high school too, right? I was like, I can find X and I don't care. What in the world do I do with X, right? It wasn't until I realized, I guess, Lauren, as I'm thinking, I'm saying this as I'm thinking, numbers remove anxiety. They can create anxiety, but they can remove anxiety. So what I tie these numbers in is to anxiety. I really do. And am I the type of person that I know, and I said this to somebody the other day, I had it, you probably heard me talk about the broken window on the back of my Jeep, and I can't get a new window, right? Because I'm waiting for it to get off a cargo ship, right? And so when the window first broke and I was like, okay, I'll buy one, and I realized I couldn't, I felt really stressed. And then I sat down and I said, well, what are my options? And I got out my power tools and a saw, and I started making my window, right? Now, while I was sawing apart on this wood, I didn't know if I could make the window. But the minute I started, and I've been reminded of this again and again in my life, the minute we take the very first action into solving a problem or understanding a problem is the minute our anxiety level decreases greatly. So what I find is when you know how to do this, you start using it, you get a trend, you start understanding this, you use it again and again, you are now engaged in running your business. You're engaged in the financial aspects. You're engaged in solving the problems. And you're not just sitting there not knowing what's going to happen and feeling powerless. You're powerful, not powerless. And that's why these numbers are so important. And that's what makes them exciting to me.
Lori, I'm gonna cry. That was so good. Because that's the thing, is trying to harness that control, right? And you just feel, and the idea of being powerless, this is your baby, this is your business. And then to have no power, it's just, it's very defeating. So I love sitting and hearing from you. I know I'm seeing everyone say how awesome it is how I'm a fan too, guys. I swear.
It's so true. And I think over the last 2 years, I mean, like I always tell people, I'm what am I now? 58. I forget because I lie about my age so much, but I'm 58. So I've been on planet Earth for a good long time, right? I've gone through recessions and banking crisis, and I've been a business consultant my whole life. Okay. So I've been around this my whole life. And I feel like the last 2 years were more feeling of out of control than any in my entire existence, right? And what I'm watching now, I help the companies get the PPP and the EIDL, as you well know, and I was heavily involved in that. But I've been telling people that we have no new funds coming into the companies now. And so what happened is a lot of people didn't have complete control and they don't really know where their numbers are. And it's more important now than ever that we do some time to sit down and see exactly where we are, because it gives us the ability to make choices versus having to respond to the situation. So I think, I guess my motto that I'll leave with, Lauren, it's time to get back in control of our companies. It's time to get back in control of understanding what's going on. It's time to get back in control of planning. Even if it's planning to shut down and start again in better times, that's still an adequate plan, but we've got to get back in control. And that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to give people these tools to get back in control and have a assessment. It's kind of like a hurricane goes through and you got to assess the damage. So what I'm saying to people, assess the damage, make decisions. Can I raise my price? Can I do this? What can I do? What would happen if I did? Don't make marketing decisions without the financial outcomes known. I've talked over today. I've gone
You
way
did,
over.
but we love it.
Well, I better get out of here because I could go on forever and ever. So really, guys, watch this training again and again. Reach out to me. Hopefully I'll see some of you guys tomorrow. If not, I repeat these 2 financial trainings monthly, and I've always announced on this show when the links are so you can sign up. Watch it again. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid that you can't see an Excel or can't use an Excel. Get out a piece of paper and a calculator. Get out your crayon with your kids. There's nothing complicated about this. Okay, I know you stay by a little bit longer, Lauren, so I'm going to say a warm goodbye to everybody, and we'll see you next week with our favorite Emma, that I cannot wait to hear what's happening in Emma's world. And I will announce all the upcoming speakers and guests because I got some pretty cool people and I just haven't had a chance to get all their information together for you. So till then, be powerful, know your numbers, learn these tricks. Numbers are your friends. Even when they're their enemy, you can turn them in your friend. Okay. Bye, guys.
Thank you, Lori. Have a good one. For all of you, I am going to hang back a little bit. I just added the session she'll have tomorrow at 10 a.m. on finance literacy session 2. And then I also included on June 23rd, she has a 10 a.m. finance literacy session 1. So she's starting the program over again. So be sure to grab those links. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, we will see you next week on Wednesday at 10 a.m. for another session. I am including our YouTube so that you can see previous. Yes, Leland, I just added it to the chat. Previous shows. And should you need anything at all, be sure to reach out. Let me put in my email address one more time for all of you. And we'll see you next week. Thank you so much. Bye.